Hello everyone, this is Ross with Odyssey Espresso, and today we are going to go over some updates on your Argos. So if you have received a package like this in the mail, go ahead and open it up. It'll say it was from us. There should be a few different pieces in here, and so we're going to resolve two different things here. One is updating the steam valve needle, so that insert, and then the other one will be installing a splash guard into your piston assembly, as well as an additional washer to help take up slop in the handle. So you can remove these pieces. You'll have your updated steam valve needle. You'll have a single metal washer for that, and then a piece of Teflon, kind of like a gasket for this. And then you'll see a small cone washer and a small piece of sheet metal. So the tools we'll be using, you'll need a 2mm Allen key, two 3mm Allen keys, one of which you can use the provided one with the machine, a 17mm wrench, and either a 22mm wrench or an adjustable wrench to help hold the valve, as well as some Molykote grease. The one that's provided in the small packet would be great. Okay, so when looking at your machine, if you start to back out the steam knob, you'll notice your needle piece will have a dark gray color compared to the new one, which is a shinier stainless. That's because originally we used a hardened stainless steel to reduce wear, but we found that the hardened stainless will have some surface corrosion, and we didn't quite need that, so we went with just a standard polished stainless. So to begin the process for removal, you'll start to back out your steam knob. You'll grab a 17mm wrench and a 22mm wrench, or the adjustable one. You'll use the 22 or the adjustable one to hold your valve in place, while your 17 will go counterclockwise to loosen that. It may take a little bit of force to loosen it. So we'll start to back this nut off. We'll also need to back off the needle at the same time. They'll run into each other. Alright, so we've got this all out. Okay, now what we'll do is we'll take our 2mm hex key and we will loosen this set screw in the wood cap. Once we loosen that, that will slide apart. Take note that there is a flat here that sat on. Once that is off, we can remove the nut, and we're left with washers and a squished Teflon gasket. So in this case, this one had two metal washers on it. Some valves were only built with one metal washer, which is fine, but for consistency's sake, we sent everyone an extra metal washer just in case, so we can all use two washers just to make things easier. So you will, because we only sent one, you will want to pull this apart. You might need some needle nose pliers. You might be able to just take it apart with your hands. So we'll just need one of these metal washers. This we can dispose of. It's recyclable, so you can recycle it. So you'll grab your new needle, and we'll install the washer, one washer on. We'll install the Teflon gasket on, and then we'll install the second washer on, the supplied washer. Okay, and so what I like to do is actually get a little bit of Molykote grease. I'll put this on my finger, and I will just apply that right around the needle where these pieces will all sit. And you can also apply it on top of these pieces to help them stick together. But this just allows smooth rotation. So now we'll take this and we will start to thread it onto the machine. Alright, so now we will take this partially assembled piece and we will start to thread it in. Note, I didn't apply any Molykote grease to the red O-ring on the needle. That's okay, it doesn't really need it. The nice thing is that that O-ring is replaceable, so over time, if that wears out, you can easily remove this and swap it. So I like to thread this in by hand just to get this shaft piece rigid as we tighten everything up. So then we'll take the nut from before and we'll start that off. So get it as far as you can by hand. Then we'll need that 17mm wrench and our 22 or adjustable wrench, and we will go ahead and tighten this down. So the reason I'm holding the valve body with the 22mm wrench is that because we're tightening this pretty snug, it could turn the valve body and change the clocking. There is a jam nut on it, but we do need to apply a good bit of force. So you'll see I am actually like putting some force into this. We do want to go pretty snug just to compress that gasket. And so you'll see the gasket starting to come out there. And so I'm going to go pretty much as snug as I can. Now you could take a razor and you could shave off this bit of gasket that's squeezed out. It's not a big deal either way, that's completely normal. I'll go ahead and get a razor and do that. Okay, so I've grabbed a razor blade. I'll just go slice this gently. Shouldn't take much. Just take that little bit off. That's purely for aesthetic reasons. So now we can go ahead and reinstall our wood knob. So make sure the set screw is in there. Helps to get it started a little bit in the threads. And so you'll look for the flat spot on the shaft and you'll align it. So I'll actually make this snug. Let me change the angle. I'll make this snug to the point where I can rotate it lightly and it stops where that flat ends. And then I'll also push it in. You don't want to push it too far. I want it to be able to slide in and out, and just go to where it barely stops there. And that's where I'm going to tighten this. So you don't want to go too tight. This is a small set screw. It could strip in there. So just snug. You know, you want to make sure you can turn it and it's not loose or wobbly. And then I'll go ahead and I'll cycle this in and I'll cycle it out. I'll make sure it's smooth, it feels good. And so from this view you can see how much I've threaded this nut on. There's really not a whole lot of space or exposed threads there. So that's what we want to see. And then I can go all the way in and out. So you want to note with this new needle valve, I have a spare one here. With the O-ring on there, we don't want to sit there and we don't want to squeeze this down and tighten it a ton, because that'll just eat away at this O-ring, and we don't need to do that. Typically I've found it'll cut off steam about like half a turn to a turn out from being all the way in. And so that's kind of where I like to keep it and have it rest. Okay, next we'll move on to the piston assembly upgrades. Go ahead and remove these 4 3mm screws. And slide your piston assembly out. You might want a towel of some sort to catch any water or anything that's in there and to wipe it down. You'll want to wipe the grease off. That's totally normal. Moving on to piston disassembly. We'll grab a 3mm wrench and I will grab the spare one from underneath the machine. So I will start by loosening this upper bolt. You'll find one side will rotate much easier than the other. Go ahead and back that side all the way out. That will be this piece. If you find a small Teflon washer on there, go ahead and throw that out. We don't need that anymore. Now what I will do is I will press down with my palm while using my Allen key to push out the other bolt, so that compresses the spring while we pop that out. Good. Once that's out, I can let up. And it would help to just wipe everything down, clean it up as we go through this. So I will slide the spring cover and the spring, if you're using a spring version, not a direct. If you're doing a direct, it's usually a little bit easier. I will also clean off these bolts. So now what we'll do is we will go to the very bottom and remove this set of bolts the same way. Make sure you keep them separated and you know which is which. The bolt for the upper piston cover is slightly longer. It's not a huge deal if you mix them up, but just helps to keep them organized. At this point, it is useful to get a Q-tip or a piece of paper towel and clean the inside of this. Sometimes it can get a little dirty with coffee grinds. So we'll grab a Q-tip. If you have isopropyl alcohol, or you could use some water, go ahead and soak that, clean it out. It just helps remove any like coffee grounds or coffee type water that might have seeped up in there. Now once that's done, you'll see there is a hole in the top of the piston, and that is for our air bleed valve. So the whole point of this piece, and you may have one that looks kind of like this generic house shape, or there's another one that is a mirror version. What you have to keep in mind is this tab poking out has to just cover this hole. The other one will look like this. We did two different styles, just testing them out, make sure they both work, see what's easier and cheaper to order. So we'll use this one just as our example. You just want to make sure the pointed piece is on the side of that hole. And so what we'll do is this will slide over the top here. It might be a tight fit. If that is the case, it does help to have some needle nose pliers or similar. What I like to do is take the needle nose pliers, gently squeeze these lugs together while getting this started. Okay, so now we've got that started, you can push gently from the corners. We don't want to bend this thing too much, so we'll be careful. So I will even squeeze the lug some more just to help work it down. So you don't want to push from the tab itself to bend that. You would like to push from the corners. So it might help to get something like a 14 to 15 millimeter wrench that you can use to help work this down. You will need to apply some force. We have a nice printed tool in the shop that helps us push this down, a 3D printed tool, but I will show you how to do it without that. So I keep changing sides here, trying to evenly work it down. If you struggle, it's likely because one side is tilted up more than the other. And so all of these are passivated 304 stainless. Because they'll see a lot of water, which is normal, or steam, we don't want those to corrode at all or get any form of surface corrosion. Alright, so I've kind of maxed out how far down I can go with the wrench. So then I'll just grab a couple Allen keys and I will carefully press the corners down, continuing to work it down. And so I alternate just to get it evenly pressed. And so you want to work this all the way down. This is our 3D printed tool. It's not necessary, but if anyone's interested, let me know. Post up in the Discord or send an email. I'd be more than happy to send you the files so you can print this out. Makes it a little bit easier, but again, it's not required. So if you were to use this, it would slide over these lugs up top. And then you basically just push down all the way. If I can get it out now. I should go a little further than that. Okay, so we can look here, and it might be hard to see, but the sheet metal tab, this splash guard, it'll never go all the way against the base, and that's because the way these pistons are cut and the way most items are cut, there is a radius on an inner corner. It's not typically a sharp corner, and so because there's a radius at the bottom of these lugs that it fits around, it's always constrained by the top of that radius because the material starts to go out, so it can't go any further. So that always gives us a nice little gap to allow air to flow up and around this splash guard to still let air out, but prevent water from just kind of spitting up. So now that that's in, we'll wipe down any mess on this. What I like to do is get a Q-tip and some Molykote grease, and I will just add a little bit of grease to the inside of these lugs. You can put it through these holes here. This is the pin for this lower lug. I'll put a little bit of grease on the outside of that just to help keep everything lubricated and moving nicely, and I will go ahead and reinstall it. If you have trouble lining it, you can use an Allen key to insert through one side and the other just to help get things started. That didn't really help me out too much. Alright, there we go. That side's through. I'll take my other little piece. I'll get that started. I'll need my second Allen key just to snug it up. You don't need to go too tight, just go nice and snug. Make sure it still pivots, it's not too tight. And so for this case, I will slide the spring back down. It sits around that sheet metal piece, which is what we want. And so for the lugs here, we want the lugs, actually sorry, that's not true. We want, depending on if you have a spring lever or direct lever, we want the direction of the lever to be going the same side as this air bleed valve. So we want the air bleed valve to face the direction of the lever, be away from the side that the water's coming in on. So the next part of our upgrade is this small conical washer. You can barely see here. And so this will take the barrel portion of our other screw, and this is actually clear, I hope so. And so we'll install this. It'll be a tight squeeze. Let's see if I can slide this out of the way. So it's tight squeeze, but basically we want the cone portion to be, I don't even know how you explain this, kind of cupping down over the head of the screw. Let me zoom in so you can get a better view of this. Here you can see the direction of the cone, the way it's installed. We want the wide portion to be facing the head of the screw, the small portion to be facing the end of the screw here. So we will slide this all the way to the bottom here. It should look like this. And the reason we want this washer, it acts similar to how the other washer was, but essentially this taper here at the bottom, where it gets closer to the sides of the shaft, that taper will actually push against the brass bushing, the inside of that brass bushing, and help push it up against this lug in the middle here to help tighten everything up on only one lug. So for consistency's sake, I prefer to put this barrel end in on this side of the lever. So if the lever arm is facing you, it is the right hand tang here. And so this can be a little tricky, can take some technique, but essentially the reverse of install, I push down on the lever. I kind of have to have an idea of where that hole is, but I will push that in with my thumb. You'll see it pokes out a little bit from that washer, that's normal. So now you can go ahead and grab the other end of that setup and get that started. Again, I should have gone ahead and greased this up with Moly Coat just the same way as we did on the bottom, but that's okay. So I will tighten this, and I'll grab my other end. This is the side with the washer, so we'll snug. This is actually kind of holds itself to tighten up. So I'll just snug it a little bit. You don't want to go too tight. When you reinstall it, you'll be able to see how this removes the slop, and you can kind of adjust it as you need. If you over tighten it, you could strip off the head of that bolt, so just be careful. So finally, I will go ahead and reinstall this. You should grease up these O-rings lightly, slide that all together. I like to install with a cross pattern, so I'll start on one side and then I'll go across to the other. And then I'll go to the last two. But when you install it, you should see that now your lever is snug. When I try to twist this side to side, it's not budging, and so it still moves up and down. All right, and that is all the upgrades for that package. Thank you.